My name's Clay Zhang. It's a very popular surname in China, and a lot of Chinese spell it Chang. From the mainland nowadays, you spell it Zhang, but it's really the same character. There's about 130 million of us that with the same last name. Originally, I spent the first 15 years of my life in Beijing, China. Basically, the entire 15 years. My my family basically settled in Beijing. Then I grew up there. I went through the part of the Great Cultural Revolution. I was a small kid at the time. I didn't really remember much. Then, when I was 15 years old, we came to America. My dad actually arrived here 5 years earlier, and then in 1984 he brought my mom and I here to San Francisco, and about 9 months later my brother came. So right now my whole family's here, and they're all in California, in the Bay Area right now. I'm the only one here in Tacoma, Washington.
Like, what was the decision behind moving to America?
My uncle came here in 1944. He was a pilot for the Nationalist Party, and that was during World War II. He came to America at that time, and then he lost contact with the family for 30-some years, and it wasn't until 1977 that he reestablished contact with his hometown, his relatives. Then he made his first visit to China in 1979, and I was 10 years old at the time. So about 6 months later, my dad came to America to visit him on a visitor visa, and he hasn't gone back to China ever since. He brought my mom and I here really just to immigrate to this country. So I was basically, an immigrant to this country. Yeah, coming to America at the time was very difficult because we were here visiting my dad. I think he just got his green card. I think we were visiting. I don't quite remember what kind of visas we had, but it was difficult. We had to go to the Chinese U.S. consulate quite a few times before our travel visa was finally approved. At the time, there weren't a lot of Chinese from, northern China that came to the States. We were one of the earlier groups there. So, but we were able to come. We were able to land in San Francisco. When we first came to America, we lived with this family. This lady, she was 85 years old at the time. She was born in 1899. That lady, she was so kind to us. To us was truly amazing how an immigrant family would be so welcomed, to such a Swiss Italian family. They opened up their home to us, and we lived with them. The first 4 years in San Francisco, I spent my first year at a high school called Newcomer High School, that they put these immigrant kids from all over the world in this high school at Pacific Heights, which is a very upscale, posh neighborhood in San Francisco, had a view of the bay, Alcatraz Island. So very pretty view. So every day we shuttled from, we took the bus from Mission District where I live, which was not a very, kind of a working class Hispanic barrio, to a very expensive neighborhood in San Francisco. We went from the poor neighborhood to the best neighborhood. We went that back and forth every day. But that was a very interesting exposure to me, a teenager, and for a lot of my classmates who that was their first experience in America. And in that 1 year, we met a lot of friends. We learned a lot of English. We were taught, some of the classes were taught in bilingual Chinese and English. So very good experience in the first year. San Francisco has always been a very open city to immigrants. There are a lot of immigrants there. And it wasn't easy, but there were a lot of support for people like us. And I think that first year has really made a big difference to us, you know, being in that environment with other immigrants and being in a place where a city that welcomed immigrants. My family at the time really, financially, we struggled because when my parents came, they came here at a much older age. My mom was already 51 when she came with me to America. My dad, when he arrived here, he was already 46, and they were both well-to-do professionals in China. But when they came here, it was very difficult for them to reestablish. There's the skill set they had at their jobs in China. They found it very difficult to land similar kind of work. And my mom used to tell us, you know, well, you basically have to make it in America because we don't, unlike these other families, you're not going to have inheritance. I remember when I was in high school, we used to, every Saturday, we used to go out and clean houses. Did that, make that for a living. A whole family, my brother, myself, my parents, we all went out to clean a couple of houses every Saturday morning. We lived in a lot of places in America. I think people, for the most part, are all very nice. When we lived in Texas, I feel like the people there are very, very good, very decent people, but they were not, a lot of them were not very, they were very curious about foreigners. I had people walk up to me at a gas station several times and asking me, what's your nationality? Are you Chinese and Korean? They were just curious. They didn't know who I was. This is in Dallas, Texas. And then there were times when it felt like they were indifferent. You know, the attitude is that, you know, if you come to my country, you got to be like us, kind of a mentality. I think America is just really, truly a great country because of that openness, because of the able to accommodate people from all over the world, giving people an opportunity to really pursue their dream. This is what American dream is all about. As I came here 33 years ago, a third of a century ago, this is a dream that I had. I'm living that dream today. There are a lot of people in America that are struggling to make ends meet. I think as new immigrants, they struggle, not in addition financially, but they also have to face language, cultural, social backlash, and that makes it so much more difficult. And the early years, the first few years of immigrating to America is the hardest, and I feel like this particular organization, TCH, provides a help during that most critical time. English, immigration service, counseling service, advocacy, that's most critical to the immigrant families. I think it truly makes a big difference.